You know what's strange about promises? They shine at first, brighter than fireflies in the summer dusk. You can almost believe they'll last forever. That's how it always seemed with Mom's wedding ring. It was small, simple, a circle of gold that caught every light in our home. When she stirred soup in the kitchen, the steam fogging the windows, I'd see it glimmer. When she bent to tuck Lily into bed, her hand smoothing the blanket with that ring flashing under the lamp, I thought of it as a seal, an unbroken bond that protected us all. When she reached across the table to hold Dad's hand, the metal caught the glow of the overhead bulb and reflected warmth into every corner of the house. To me, that ring was more than jewelry. It was the sound of laughter at dinner, the smell of fresh bread on Sunday mornings, the quiet way Dad leaned against her shoulder after long days. It was home itself, compressed into a single circle of gold. But dogs notice things that humans miss. My eyes are not what they used to be, clouded now, shadows where clarity used to live. Yet I see, and I smell, and I feel. Humans think their secrets are silent, but they aren't. They have weight, texture, scent. I smelled the shift before I saw it. The ring that once smelled of warm skin and sunlight began to carry something sharper. A trace of iron like blood kept inside too long. A bitter note, like coffee left cold in its cup. The smell of worry, of hesitation, the smell of something ending. My name is Rex. I am a family dog. I have lived in this house for 12 years. I've watched Lily grow from a baby who gripped my ears too hard into a girl who whispers her secrets into my fur. I've sat by the door waiting for Dad's boots to thump against the porch after a long day. I've laid at Mom's feet while she hummed songs she didn't even know she was humming. I've been the witness to all of it, the sounds, the silences, the promises. And I remember the night the promise broke, the night Mom stopped wearing her wedding ring. It didn't begin that night. Nothing ever does. Cracks form long before walls collapse. I noticed the silences first. At the dinner table, Dad would ask Lily about school, but his eyes stayed on his plate. Mom would answer questions meant for her with a nod or a quiet fine, never looking up. Lily would try to fill the space with stories about her day, but her voice would fade when she saw no one listening. And me? I heard the silence louder than the words. To a dog, silence is not empty. It roars, it carries weight, it scratches at the floorboards. It fills the air until every sound, every sigh, every shuffle of a chair feels deafening. I noticed Mom twisting her ring more often. Not the playful kind of twisting she used to do when she was happy. Not absent-minded at all. This was different. Nervous, restless, around and around, faster each time, as though she was trying to spin answers out of the gold itself. I noticed Dad watching her hand sometimes, his eyes catching the glint, then turning away, his jaw set hard. They didn't speak about it, but I could feel their silence like a leash tightening around all of us. Lily noticed too, though she didn't have words for it. Children never need words. They sense the air change, the way dogs do. She stopped calling both of them into the living room to show her drawings. She brought them to me instead, crouching by my corner with crayons still warm in her fingers. "See, Rex," she whispered once, holding up a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. "That's us." She pressed the paper against my nose, as though she wanted me to smell proof of family. I licked her cheek, but I couldn't tell her the truth, that sometimes drawings stay whole while real families begin to split apart. The house had its rhythms, but they no longer matched. Dad's boots hit the porch later and later each night, the sound heavier, like stones dropped into water. Mom stopped humming. She moved through the kitchen with silence wrapped around her like an apron. Lily played quieter too. No more squeals of delight that once bounced off the walls. Just soft giggles, meant only for me, muffled under blankets. I remember one night in particular, weeks before the ring came off. Rain lashed the windows and the fire sputtered in the hearth. Dad sat with his head bent, staring at unpaid bills. Mom scrubbed at plates that were already clean. The silence was thick, bitter. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice low. "We can't keep doing this, Martha." But Mom didn't answer. She just twisted the ring, faster and faster, until the gold cut a faint red mark into her skin. I smelled her tears before I saw them. Salty, sharp. I laid my head on my paws and listened as the silence swallowed them both again. Dogs know when storms are coming, not just the kind that rumble across the sky, but the kind that shake houses apart. I smelled the storm in their clothes, in their footsteps, in the way Mom's laugh disappeared from the air. It smelled like endings, like goodbye. I tried to press against them, to remind them of warmth, of loyalty, of love that does not leave. But sometimes even dogs cannot stop what's already breaking. And then came the night, a Thursday. Lily upstairs, tucked in with her stuffed rabbit. Dad on the couch, his eyes fixed on the television, but his mind far away. Mom in the kitchen, washing dishes that didn't need washing. I lay in my corner listening, watching, smelling. The air was heavy, and then I saw it. Mom slid the ring from her finger, slowly, carefully. She placed it on the counter beside the sink. The circle broke. The promise unspooled. The silence deepened until it howled. Dad noticed. He always noticed, even when he pretended not to. His eyes left the television, slow as if he didn't want to confirm what he'd seen. His gaze dropped to her bare hand, then to the ring sitting on the counter, still catching the kitchen light, small but louder than thunder. His face didn't twist in anger. It didn't erupt in fury. It sagged like the beams of a house that's held up too long under too much weight. Resignation filled him, and the air around him shifted from silence into something heavier. Defeat. I lifted my head, ears pricked, because I knew this wasn't just another quiet night. This was the night everything broke. "Is this it, Martha?" Dad's voice cracked like an old floorboard. It was quiet, too quiet, but to me it sounded like a bark in the stillness. His hands were clenched tight, not around anything, just fists clinging to emptiness. Mom didn't turn to face him right away. She kept her hand flat on the counter where she set the ring, fingers spread, steadying herself against the invisible storm. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, like a candle flame burning itself out. "I can't keep pretending, Robert. Not for me, not for you, not even for her." I smelled it before I understood it. The salt of tears unshed, the iron tang of fear, the bitter edge of shame. They filled the room like smoke, invisible but choking. Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His silence was different from hers. Hers was steady, chosen, like stone laid carefully. His was jagged, breaking in his throat, held back because he didn't know how to release it without drowning in it. Above us, a floorboard creaked. My ears flicked, my nose lifted. Lily. She wasn't asleep. Her little feet padded softly to the top of the stairs, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. She sat there in the shadows, just far enough back to be unseen, listening the way children always do when they know something is wrong. She didn't need words, she could feel it, the way I did. The family she drew in crayon, 3 figures holding hands, was unraveling in whispers and silence. Dad's voice broke the air again, thick with exhaustion. "So what now? You want me gone? You want me to pack up and walk away from all of this?" He gestured vaguely, not at her, not at me, but at everything. The house, the years, the child asleep upstairs who wasn't asleep at all. Mom's shoulders slumped. "I don't know," she whispered, and those 3 words weighed more than any shouting could have. "I just know I can't live in silence anymore." The fire in the hearth hissed softly as a log shifted. Rain tapped harder against the windows. The grandfather clock ticked in the corner, each beat sounding like a drum. I lay still in my corner, my chest heavy with the pressure of the storm I couldn't stop. If I could have spoken, I would have begged them, snapped them out of the fog, reminded them of Lily, of promises, of the warmth that still lingered under all this cold. But all I could do was watch, my eyes following the ring on the counter. It didn't move, but it screamed at me louder than anything else in the room. The night stretched on, Words stumbled out here and there, unfinished, broken. Dad tried to argue, then stopped halfway through. Mom tried to explain, but explanations turned into silence. Their voices rose once, only once, sharp as glass, and Lily flinched upstairs where she sat clutching her rabbit tighter. I caught her scent, the sharp salt of tears mixing with the storm outside. It hurt because I knew she thought it was her fault. Children always do. They don't understand the way promises erode. They think they're the crack in the wall when really they're the beam holding it up. Eventually, Dad stood, his chair scraping the floor in a sound that split the room like thunder. He didn't shout, didn't slam his fists. He just shook his head and walked down the hallway. The guest room door clicked shut, softer than a sigh. Mom stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, with her face in her hands. The ring still sat there, untouched, glowing under the dull light. I patted quietly across the floor, nosed her leg. She looked down at me, her eyes red, her cheeks wet. "Oh, Rex," she whispered, and her voice broke. She sank to the floor and buried her face in my fur. I felt her sobs shudder through her body. I stayed still, steady, the only thing in the room that didn't waver. Later that night, I padded upstairs to check on Lily. She wasn't in bed. She sat cross-legged on the floor by the door, her stuffed rabbit limp in her lap. Her cheeks were streaked with tears. "Why don't they talk anymore, Rex?" she whispered, her little voice cracking. Did I do something wrong? I pressed my muzzle into her shoulder, letting her small arms wrap tight around my neck. I couldn't answer her, but I hoped she felt the truth in my warmth, that it wasn't her fault, that sometimes people break even when love isn't gone, that sometimes silence is heavier than anger. The house felt different after that night. The air was sharper, every sound louder. Dad moved quietly, avoiding the kitchen in the mornings. Mom carried herself slower, her hands bare, her eyes tired. The ring stayed on the counter for 2 days before she tucked it into a drawer. I heard the faint clink of metal against wood when she closed it, and I knew it wasn't coming back. It wasn't just jewelry being put away. It was years of trying, years of pretending, years of silence finally given form. Lily asked fewer questions after that. Children know when answers won't come. She still whispered into my fur, but her stories were shorter, less colorful. She stopped drawing 3 stick figures. Sometimes she drew just 2, her and me. Other times she drew 3, but the figures weren't holding hands anymore. They stood apart, separated by blank white space, her small crayon strokes telling the truth she couldn't speak. At night I heard the faint sounds of crying, sometimes Mom's muffled into her pillow, sometimes Dad's, low and strangled from the guest room. Their tears never met, never reached each other, but they carried the same bitter scent of loss. And me? I lay in the hallway between their rooms, stretched out across the wooden floor like a bridge they refused to cross. Days passed. The silence grew roots. It dug into every corner of the house. Meals were eaten in quiet. Chores were done without words. Only Lily's soft laughter broke through, and even that was rare, often hidden. But in her eyes I saw the same question she had whispered to me that night. Why? Why did the promise vanish? Why did the ring disappear? Why wasn't love enough to keep them whole? I couldn't answer. All I knew was what I had seen, what I had smelled, what I had felt. The night Mom placed the ring on the counter, the circle broke, and the silence, heavy and sharp, rushed in to fill its place.